back, everybody, and we're doing a live podcast once again. We got all the way through the theme, and it didn't sound like crap. I may have finally gotten this thing figured out. Special shout out to Miss Starshine, who's been MIA for a while. Glad you have decided to join us and grace with your presence tonight. Welcome all the squatchers out there. We are glad to be here live tonight. That's right. We are getting down to the end of the season of tracking Bigfoot in America, talking about Bigfoot casts. And, it's one of those things that every once in a while you come across a very strange case, and that's what we have for you tonight. We're going to forego the news a little bit because, well, I still haven't gotten everything quite figured out, but we do have a quasi theory for us tonight and a Bigfoot campfire story. So hopefully we'll be able to get it all in tonight and have a fantastic time of it. And with that, we might as well just go ahead and jump right into tonight's topic. We're talking about British Columbia. That's right there. Well, you're talking about tracking Bigfoot in America. Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am talking about tracking Bigfoot in America, and Bigfoot is British Columbia is in the Americas, and that's what we wanted to talk about tonight. 1993 in Seward, British Columbia. Now, the date of the actual collection is, or the foot track was left, is unknown. Of course, the region is Vancouver Island. Found by a witness ID withheld, 14 and a three-quarter inch length by 5 inches wide, which is a strange, a strange ratio as we're used to. And at the foot of the heel, it is 4.5. Usually they are twice as long as they are half again wide. So this one's a little bit third longer than it could be, but it's a weird looking track. I don't know that they got the width of it really at the greatest point. Anyhow, this cast is one of several collected by a deer hunter and a friend on the east coast of Vancouver Island in British Columbia. The hunter wished to have his name withheld and his wishes to be respected. Now, this cast would have never been obtained if the witness's wife didn't encourage him to contact the great Renee DeHinden. DeHinden advised the witness to make a plaster cast of what he found. The witness returned to the location and made an excellent cast. A dam had to be made around the impression in order to capture the shallow print. Even then, only 4 toes registered in the substrate. Dr. John Bendernagle, may he rest in peace, heard about it, the sighting, and eventually tracked down the witness. The witness was hesitant to meet with a Bigfoot investigator, but eventually Bendernagle was permitted to meet with him and to copy the cast. There are still efforts to obtain the other cast from this event for duplication. The individual Sasquatch that left his footprint was certainly the same individual that left a print in the Strathcona Province Park in 1988, some 40 miles to the south. This earlier footprint was found and cast by Dr. John Bendernagle and his wife. Now, one of the reasons that I brought this particular cast up is because of the spectacular detail that there is in this particular cast that's in the ground. And as you can see, we talk about always don't clean the debris out of the cast. If they would have cleaned the debris out of the cast, they would have lost this root structure that was actually underneath the foot as it stepped down on it from a tree. A lot of this detail in the back is important because it shows that whatever stepped down into this track definitely stepped down with a naked foot. You can see the toe structure is definitely not that of a bear. The width of the ball of the foot, the fact that the mid-tarsal region is not registering in the track as well goes to what they say the mid-tarsal break, as it used to be called, or the mid-tarsal joint, is going to be not evident in a very shallow cast. And as we heard in the description of the cast, they actually had to build a dam around this one in order to get the shallow cast to actually, not just run all the plaster away. That's one of the things that's kind of important to it. I would have dug a lip around it so that the plaster would have just kind of poured into the lip around it as well and just made it one solid mass. But there's several ways of doing these. Speaking of, in this particular case, we follow that link here on the cliffbarackman.com website, and that takes us over to the 1988 Strathcona Provincial Park in October, British Columbia. John and Joan Bendernagle, where it was documented and found by them, 15 inches long, 6.5 inches wide, and 4.5 inches at the heel. Now that seems, again, like we said, a little bit shy of what the ratio usually finds, but in this particular instance, you can see the shape of the toes, the shape of the structure of it. Apparently there's a picture. 1988 was found by Dr. John Bendernagle and his wife. It was left on a hiking trail, and indeed that is a hiker's boot that you can see inside of the track. So as if somebody didn't notice it and walked through it, or somebody did notice it and compared their boot to it, and then it was cast later by Dr. Bendernagle, whatever the case may be. Again, this is one of those cases where it's an organic find. The track being cast is nothing more than whatever had interacted with the substrate before the track was cast. Now, this very well could be that there was a boot print in the ground and Bigfoot walked over it as well, which could very well be more the case. I'm not really sure how that boot print would have gotten into the middle of this. When in the summer of 2007, he brought in a number of other casts. 2 other of his casts caught his attention. When I asked him about the other casts, he assumedly cast same as the cast above. He's told me that the casts were some 40 miles apart. They were obviously from the same individual, having the same particular toe shape and size. Apparently, this individual gets around. And that's one of the things that I talk about here in the high Sierras. You know, when the snow starts to move in, like it's starting to now, you know, they'll dump 10 feet of snow up there. Where do those Sasquatch go? Well, of course, they've got to head to lower grounds where it's not snowy and there's still food for the winter. What is 40 miles in the grand scheme of a creature that has a 5-foot average step? Well, the average army man can walk 20 to 25 miles a day with a 70-pound pack on his back, and he can maintain that for, weeks on end. So how far can a Sasquatch walk with nothing on his back, or, a female with a baby in tow? It's really difficult to tell. But when you look at the 2 casts themselves, this one actually has the 5th toe in it where the other one does not. But in particular, the shapes of the toes definitely do lend themselves to being the same animal, some 40 miles apart. I just thought that was absolutely fantastic to be able to find out there in the track cast records. Hey, by the way, if you guys like what we do out here, you can become a patron at patreon.com/cryptid corner. General admission is just $1 a month. $2 support, well, because you're a G, and $5 to get you to be an insider. You can help me make some decisions on what goes up here. 2 brand new Bigfoot campfire stories have been added to the Patreon feed, and there's still up there one for people to get a taste of what it sounds like. So if you'd like to help us out here, because YouTube is seriously still screwing everybody, it is patreon.com/cryptid corner. And that only comes out at the beginning of the month. I'm not one of those people that takes $1 every time I release something. No, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. That's not how this works at all. All right, people. So at this point, well, let me put that back up there, because at this point, we're going to go ahead and give it a shot. We're going to try and run our quasi theory of the week. So let's give it down to Mr. Dean Cooper, our quasi theorist. And now, quasi theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
Goblins, their habits and haunts. From Wikipedia, the source we can all quote from and not get sued. A goblin is a monstrous creature from European folklore, first attested in stories from the Middle Ages. They are ascribed various and conflicting abilities, temperaments, and appearances, depending on the story and country of origin. They are almost always small and grotesque, mischievous or outright evil, and greedy, especially for gold and jewelry. They often have magical abilities similar to a fairy or demon. Similar creatures include brownies, dwarves, gnomes, imps, and kobolds. Whoever wrote this obviously had no real experience with goblins. For that, we must go to primary sources. These sources do not include J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien used the term goblin in The Hobbit. He later wished that he used the word orc, which is not the same creature as a goblin. No, we need to go to someone who has accurately described goblin behavior and appearances. That would be James Whitcomb Riley. He's been dead long enough that I may quote him liberally, like unto Wikipedia, with no ensuing legal consequences. So here goes. Little orphan Annies come to our house to stay, and wash the cups and saucers up and brush the crumbs away, and shoo the chickens off the porch and dust the hearth and sweep, and make the fire and bake the bread and earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we sit around the kitchen fire and has the mostest fun, a-listening to the witch tales that Annie tells us about, and the goblins that'll get you if you don't watch out. Once there was a little boy who wouldn't say his prayers, and when he went to bed at night away upstairs, his mammy heard him holler, and his daddy heard him bawl, and when they turned the covers down, he wasn't there at all. And they seeked him in the rafter room and cubby hole and press, and seeked him up the chimbley flue and everywheres, I guess. But all they ever found was his pants and roundabout. And the goblins'll get you if you don't watch out. And one time a little girl would always laugh and grin and make fun of everyone, all her blood and kin. And once when there was company and old folks was there, she mocked 'em and shocked 'em and said she didn't care. And just as she kicked her heels and turned to run and hide, there was two great big black things a-standing by her side, and they snatched her through the ceiling, for she knowed what she is about. And the goblins'll get you if you don't watch out. And little orphan Annie says when the blaze is blue, and the lamp wick sputters and the wind goes woo, and you hear the crickets quit, and the moon is gray, and the lightning bugs and dew is all squinched away, you better mind your parents and your teachers fond and dear, and cherish them that loves you and dry the orphan's tear, and help the poor and needy ones that clusters all about, or the goblins'll get you if you don't watch out. From my own experience, you can catch one in a properly baited snare utilizing locally caught free-range naughty children. They have a nice pelt and they taste like chicken. The goblins, that is. Don't eat the children. You can sell their leftover bits to the wicked witch down the street, thereby destroying the evidence. This has been Dean Cooper, quasi-scientist, enlightening you with my quasi-theory of the week. You may read the text of this on my blog at bhaidin.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
And there you have it, folks. Finally, a successful quasi-theory after weeks and weeks of trying. I may have finally gotten StreamYard figured out. We shall see. We shall see. All right, well, let's get back into it here. And I've got a few BFRO reports that I wanted to talk about from the same area from the exact same year. Early that year, 1993, in the wintertime of January, the information supplied by a forestry technician. He was flown 100 kilometers by helicopter out of Naxup. Not Nutsack, but Naxup. Yeah, whatever, sure. The helicopter landed in the Alpine Basin. The month of the incident was in January, and this person was to do road layout. He noticed tracks of naked feet, normal size, 10 inches long, with a normal width, and he thought that he saw a couple of footprints in the snow, and then they fell through the snow. He wondered who the heck would be walking around in the winter, but he had to do work. He came back to the helicopter and asked the pilot if he had walked around in the bowl, and the pilot said no. Usually they stay close to the helicopter. He thought that the pilot had been playing a trick on him, but believed it was the start of the day. He said he knew of no reason why someone would be in the middle of nowhere in 10 to 20 degrees below zero, making bare tracks in the snow. It would be a costly place and to make tracks in the middle of nowhere. And that's one of the things that I've talked about with people. And they ask, oh, well, tracks can be faked. Of course, tracks can be easily faked. It's not hard to go out there and stamp some Bigfoot. And you're right. Tracks can be faked, but who are you faking them for? Most of the tracks that are found organically are found in the middle of nowhere by people like me who put themselves in the middle of nowhere for no other reason than to look for tracks from these things that might or might not be out there. Well, most of us that are out there looking for tracks that deep know that they're out there, but I digress. Where would you be hoaxing these tracks for in the hopes that somebody who might care might come across them? Not really all that sure. So, moving right along now, summertime 1993, of course, a large hominid walking near the top of the tree line on a clear cut beside the lake. Noticed tree planters working on the same clear cut for the first 5 days, as I was able to judge the being as a being very large physique. Also noted the fact that he had a fluid, somewhat athletic gait. Its speed was deceiving because it looked like a person out for a leisurely stroll. Yet when I looked back to the point I first saw them, there was an amazing amount of ground covered in a short time. Once again, I was able to judge this from watching the tree planters from the days before. Now I'll tell you right that I'm an avid bear hunter, and nobody can tell me that it was a bear because I have hunted and shot bear every season since 1986. Twarn't no bear. Two other friends spent the last 7.5 days fishing and heading down the lake to the lodge where their truck and boat trailer were parked. So, this is one of those cases where they get dropped off and float down the river to fish, and they watch the tree planters for days and days and days, and then all of a sudden, there's a big, hairy hominid-looking thing walking along the area. I mean, there's no point in making something like that up. If that's a person in a suit, why are they out in the middle of nowhere? Then again, once again, I digress. And finally, for the evening here, we got 1993. This is a nice, decent one here. Fall in October, near the Naxup. This is like trying to read friggin' stuff from the Netherlands. I can't pronounce those words. I'm sorry. Myself and 3 other people were at St. Leon Hot Springs, just north of Naxup. Thanksgiving Day in 1993, and I'm sure that's probably in that's in Canadian Thanksgiving, so that's October. Is a natural undeveloped spring, basically a small pool in the forest about 3 kilometers from the main highway. As we were leaving the pool about 11:30, we were walking single file up a steep incline back towards the truck when me, myself, and another male member of the group heard what we assumed to be a bear approximately 25 to 30 feet to our left. Not wanting the girls to panic, we quietly decided not to tell them and just keep walking to the vehicle. Yeah, that's right. Let's not scare the girls with something that might eat them. No, let's just never mind. Okay. The brush off of the trail is fairly thick and would be extremely difficult to get through for a man. But that's what we were moving fairly easily through and keeping up with our stride. At this point, the girls could hear branches snapping in the bush and inquired, what was that? We answered, it's probably just a bear. As soon as I made that statement, a wail, like I've never heard before, came from that direction of what we figured was the bear. I've spent a lot of time in the bush, and there's no animal that makes a noise like that in this forest. The closest thing I can compare it to is a peacock call, but it was such a high decibel, it actually made our ears vibrate, like when you're in front of a stack of amplifiers at a concert. Then whatever it was turned and ran very quickly down the hill, through the bush, away from us. The thing was you could hear that whatever this animal was obviously on two legs, not four. And there is no way a man could run through that thick brush that quickly. It scared all of us, and we wanted to run to the truck and got in. Funny thing was, we were all immediately knew that we had just experienced, but we were all reluctant to say what we each thought it was. But we finally did, and all agreed that we had just heard a Sasquatch. Shh, do you hear that? I think that was a Sasquatch. Let me tell you a story. No, hey, let's before we get out of here this evening, let's make sure we give a shout out to the guys that are hanging out with us live here tonight. We don't want to forget our fabulous fans and patrons out there. That is for sure. Tonight we've got, like I said, we said hello there, Miss Starshine's hanging out in the room with us tonight. Miss Natalie Smith, I'm so glad that you're feeling better. We're still praying for you. There's Shane Barber. How you doing there, champ? Mr. Lance Windsor, there he is, the great white Canadian himself. Tim McCune, there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Don Reif, the Viking. How you doing there, champ? Glad you are hanging with us. Miss Bella Allegria, hello there, young lady. Glad you were with us. Hey, Mr. Fang, made it in tonight. How you doing there, pal? Glad you made it to the show tonight live. Who else is hanging out there with us tonight? I know there's more than this. Mr. Dean Cooper. That's right. He's our man with the quasi plan. There's Mr. Kit. How you doing there, Chow? Glad you could make it with us tonight, sir. All right. There's Rod Dupree. He's always in the place to be. And there's Mr. Keith Hare Harden. How you doing there, Keith? And Dean Dinobots. Glad you are hanging out with us tonight, sir. Obsidian Radio made the plan. How you doing there? Glad you're there. There's Aaron Duncan digging that gold out of the ground. I know how that goes. Your Hobo Man 5, 4, 3, 2. Karen Rob's in the house as well. Hello there, Miss Karen. Let's see here. Jeremy Crocho. Hello, Crocho. Hello there, sir. Glad you're with us. Let's see here. Almost down to the bottom here. If you haven't said hi to me, I can't say hi to you because I don't know you's in the house. So glad there, Dean. Binobot's name is Kevin. Glad you are with us as well. So a big shout out to my son, Sean. I know you'll catch this later on. You're probably just pooped out and sleeping. And with that, everybody, we're going to wrap this edition of the Squatchers Lounge podcast up with a Bigfoot campfire story. That's right. Since the quasi theory went so well, we're going to give you the Men in Black admits that UFOs and Bigfoots are 100% real. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. Looks like we finally got most of the buds worked out. Hopefully, we can add the camping tips for stupids and the news back in next week, and we'll be back to doing a full show. So thank you so much all for being here tonight. We are glad you came with us, and we will see you next week. Same time, same bat channel. That's right here at the Squatchers Lounge podcast. May the Squatch be with you. What the hell is that? I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that was a Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story. The brown. Well, after a short hiatus, old Reverend Jeff here is glad to be back with the Bigfoot campfire stories. Now, this story was told to me by a gentleman named John Smith. As much as I'd like to believe that was his real name, the black suit and matching sunglasses tend to make me think just a little different. Now, he claimed to have witnessed definitive proof that Bigfoot and aliens exist. That's why I had to retell this story. I was assigned to monitor a group of what we suspected to be a militia group working high in the Rocky Mountains. There had been reports to local law enforcement of glowing lights and machine activity in locations that humans rarely found, but pictures and videos of obvious man-made clearings were evident in the region, so we were sent in to investigate. We were dropped in with our gear by helicopter before the break of day, and we were sent to a predetermined, secluded area to set up camp not far from the located area. For the first couple of nights, nothing much outside of odd animal noises were noticed by anyone in the camp. But on the third night, all of that changed. A sentry reported a glowing green light coming from a forest about 5 clicks outside of camp. We geared up to check it out. Our recon position had eyes on the light but could not determine what was making it, so we went on through the tree line to continue on our path to intercept it. Just as we cleared the last ridge to what would be the light, it literally ascended so quickly that no one could see what it was before it was out of sight. We rushed the area where the light had been, only to find it completely void of anything, including vegetation. So we backed out and set up camp for the night. The next morning, we did a grid search of the site, and many of us kept finding these overly large human-like bare footprints all around where the light had been, leading in all directions into the forest. We searched and searched for the tracks leading to the site, but not a single print could be found. It was as if the prints all came out of the light and then disappeared into the forest. We collected as much evidence as we could. We packed them up and then went back to camp. What we witnessed must have been like winning the lottery, but we had to wait it out to see. For weeks, we stood a visual watch on the area looking for more lights and more evidence, but without any luck at all. Finally, we had been called back to HQ and been reassigned once again. That was the last of my exposure to what you call Bigfoot, but I can tell you for sure, no man made those tracks, and that light ball was not from this planet either. Well, it seems that this story bothered John so much he just had to get it off his chest. It just goes to show you when we think we have all the answers, sometimes the questions change. Thanks for listening. I'm Reverend Jeff. May the Squatch be with you.